Philadelphia today.
Oh, we were going hot as sexy as.
Oh, no, sorry. So I'm going to start with, I got a bunch of questions for you. In fact, I wrote them all down here. But I'm going to start with what the question I think is probably most on everybody's mind this morning, which is that really a tuxedo t-shirt you're wearing under there?
It's a tech tuxedo. It's what we do in the tech industry. I don't have a suit.
You don't own a suit?
No.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I certainly don't know how to type bow tie. It's really great when they're printed on. This is actually a Curaleaf shirt, though. That's what we do with Curaleaf.
No surprise there. All right, well, let's get into getting to know you here a little bit with the audience. For those who maybe haven't read all of your press recently in various magazines, maybe we can catch them up to speed. Ironically, you're here in Philly, but born in Silicon Valley. Is that right? How did that happen, and how did you end up here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so first of all, look, I'm super stoked to be living in Philly and building a startup in Philly. I'm more than anything just humbled to be here today. I grew up in the Silicon Valley. I grew up around tech most of my career. I'm a child of the PC era. My parents were in tech, and I kind of ended up in Philly by happenstance. I went to business school here and ended up, after business school, I left and built a company in India. And I got married along the way, and my wife, we decided that we wanted to move back to the States and kind of put her career in front. She found a great job here in Philly, and we decided to move to Philly. And I realized, after moving here, that I wanted to build a company, and so I did. And that's how it happened. That's how it happened. And now we're here, and the company is thriving. We have a really great team here. And we're here to stay. We're really proud to call Philly home.
Gotta love it. I wanted to build a company, and so I did it. You gotta love it. Were there any early signs? I oftentimes get asked, when you're growing up, were there any sort of early signs that you were gonna eventually one day be an entrepreneur? Like, did you sell your dad's car when he wasn't looking? Anything like that?
No, I was like a very confused child. I don't know. I wanted to do a million different things with my life. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I just, I think what was challenging about growing up was, so I'm a child of an immigrant family, and I think, both my parents were very highly educated, their PhDs in chemistry. And as an immigrant family, they kind of believed in the straight and narrow, and they kind of believed that you go down a certain path, and that's what you do. And so entrepreneurship, even though I grew up in the Valley and I grew up around tech, it wasn't what it is today. First of all, back when I was growing up, 20-year-olds didn't start companies, right? I mean, even Mark Andreessen, when he started Netscape, had to go hire, a gray hair, as they called them back then, right? I have now much of that, to help him to go get funded and to go build up a company. Now you don't do that, right? But it was just such a different era back then. So it wasn't. I mean, I always had all these random ideas, and my parents thought they were stupid, so I went to college,
The gray hair stock is definitely dropping. You sort of know when you're starting to hit the pinnacle of your career. You get contacted by Phil, like, hey, we'd like you to do ThinkFest. I'm like, oh, I'd be honored, I'd be privileged. They're like, yeah, we'd like you to interview a Gupta. I'm like,
it's okay, Bob. I'm going straight from black to gold, so my hair is skipping the gray phase also.
So you did skip around a bit. I read the article, and you wanted to be a lot of different things. You skipped around, and then you hit a quarter-life crisis.
Yes.
And what was that like? You did a sabbatical? You sort of...
Yeah, so I was working for a tech company in the Valley called WebEx. It was the first tech company I ever...
Some people here might remember it.
Some people might know it. So I was the first company, I don't know, early 20s, 23 or so when I joined this company. I was a very early employee there, and was with them from their first round of funding all the way through their IPO. And it was like an amazing time to, as a 23-year-old to go be a part of something like that. But I hated who I was becoming. I hated myself. I hated I hated my life in general. And I told the company I was going to quit. I told my parents I just needed to go travel and to find myself. To an immigrant family, that was a really strange thing. Just they're like, you're an idiot. So rightly so. And so I ended up quitting my job. I went traveling for 9 months, and I ended up in Australia planting trees. The whole thing was actually motivated by snowboarding. I really wanted to go snowboarding, and the only place at that time of year that I could go snowboarding that also spoke English was New Zealand. So I ended up in New Zealand, and then I felt like I was really being too indulgent, so I went and planted trees in Australia. Yeah, so I did that for 9 months. It was kind of amazing.
That's really amazing. I want to get into your first couple of startups, but now I'm hit with a question. You're clearly very confident. Like, I wanted to build a company. I wanted to build a company, so I built a company. I told them, spin off a unit, make me the CEO. Where does that inner confidence come from?
I'm really not that confident. I haven't read the article yet, and
It says you're very confident.
I know, but I'm like really, I'm actually really insecure. Like, I mean, we all have insecurities, right? But like, it's taken a really, really long time for me. It's taken a really long time for me. I think I've always thought I can do things. I've always thought but it's taken a long time for me to believe in me to go do those things. And it wasn't until I got back from India, where I had a really successful run, and I was faced with a terrible economy, and I couldn't get a job. Like, nobody would hire me. And it was, I had been there before. I've spent about a third of my career unemployed, and partly by design, partly not. And I was like, okay, this is it. If I'm going to go start something, I have to go do it now. And I was fortunate enough that it worked out. But
why the pharma chain? Why India? You'd never even been there, from what I gathered.
No, I mean, I'm Indian, and I grew up going to India like every couple of years as a child. My parents would take me back. I don't have a deep connection to India, and my parents came here in the 70s, and as a result, when they raised me, there weren't that many Indians in the United States at the time, and when they raised me, they raised me to never speak anything but English. So I don't speak. I understand some Hindi, but I don't speak much. But when I was in business school at Wharton, I made a trip to India with the university, and we saw at the time India was a changed place, and it was really, really interesting to see it. And I've always been really, really interested in marketing and how consumers and brands form relationships at like an academic level. And I looked at what was going on in India and just the massive increase in the middle class that was happening, and I said, this is going to give rise to brands. Because anytime you see a massive rise in wealth, you see a massive rise in mobility, and when you see a massive rise in mobility, you need trust. You need to be able to trust the brands that you're buying from. You no longer just go to the shop down the corner that you've known your whole life. All of a sudden you're in some new city that you've never been in, and you don't know who to buy from. And so we said, look, we need to build a brand. And it turned out that the pharmacy industry in India was incredibly fragmented, but it also had a tremendous amount of fake drugs. There was a huge counterfeit problem there, and we wanted to fix that. And we did. We built what became the second largest pharmacy chain in the country inside of 3 years. We put up 650 physical stores, raised $32 million for that business, and continues to exist.
That's fantastic. So I want to get to the Curate story, but we have one more stop along the way. Storely. Tell us a little bit about Storely. The Airbnb for what, driveways and attics or something like that?
Did you say attics?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, addicts.
Oh, not addicts. Okay, so. So we built a company before we started Curate. My co-founder Nick, who's the best co-founder I could ever dream of, Nick and I started a company called Storely, and Storely is Airbnb for parking and storage. This was middle of 2011. Airbnb had just raised $100 million at a $1 billion valuation. Everybody in the Silicon Valley thought that Airbnb was crazy, and then they raised all this money, and they were like, holy crap, we missed out. And along come these two guys, and pitched them this idea of Airbnb for parking and storage. And they're like, yeah, this Airbnb thing's happening. Clearly, like, basements and driveways are going to happen next. And so they handed us a check. I mean, there's a lot to be said for time. Okay, it's not. I would love to say this is me. It was Airbnb, and so they funded us, and it turns out it's a really stupid idea. So we very quickly realized that it was a bad idea. We had all this press in Philly. Nobody cared. Like, nobody bought this stuff. I think at our peak, we were doing about $200 a month And our cut
Was it recurring revenue anyway?
well, our cut of it was like 5%. So like we were making like $10, right? Like it was moronic. Like you know, a shot at a bar. Like, you know, like we would go to celebrate. Like it was costing us. It was terrible. So we shut it down, and we went back to our investors. We said, look, you can have your money back, and they said no. And you know, long story short, we ended up creating a whole new business.
It's fantastic. Let's talk about Curelate now. So Curelate wants to change the way people discover and buy things on the internet, right? What does that mean? What does that really mean?
Yeah, so you know, so what we're doing at Curelate is we're making images and videos shoppable. So you know, you can go on Facebook today and you can tap a picture and you can see all the people that are in it. We're doing that for products. Now you can go to a picture and you can tap on it and you can see all the products that are in that. But we want to do that everywhere consumers live. So if you're in search, if you're on social, if you're in email, if you're in an app, if you're in an ad, if you're on a brand's website, we want you to be able to interact with images and videos and be able to immediately determine all of the great products and experiences and services that are in it. And that's going to change how consumers buy. It's going to change how consumers discover. And it's working. We currently work with almost 900 of the world's most loved brands. We power these kind of discovery experiences and consumer experiences for almost 200 million consumers a month. We've raised $40 million. We have 160 people across 3 offices, and it's been incredible. You know, we're trying to change how people discover online.
Where did the idea come from? Where do ideas like that come from?
A lot of I guess the PG answer would be just a lot of brainstorming. It's about passions, right? It's about personal passions. It was so interesting when we had this pivot from Storably to Curelate. We started Storably very opportunistically. Airbnb raises this money, we start this company. And I can tell you, like, visiting people's driveways and basements, because that's what you do when you start companies. You do whatever it takes to get a customer. Dude, you go to a basement and a driveway, and it is not cool. It is not fun, it's ugly, it's disgusting. Our first client was a hoarder, it was gross. But when we were confronted with this idea of like changing directions, the first thing we got to do was examine our own personal interests. My co-founder loves machine learning, okay? Like, as dorky as it sounds, like, he is a big nerd and he loves big data problems, okay? I love marketing. I love the way that consumers and brands form relationships. And our first employee, a guy named Brendan Lowry, is a social media savant. This guy was 22 years old at the time, grew up on social media. He's a social media influencer now. And it was those collective passions that came together and shaped Curelate. And if you look at what we do today, it is the intersection of those things. And it is a reflection of how consumers are changing online and how their behaviors are changing and how that will shape what they buy.
Awesome. So we need to tackle the unicorn question next. For the audience, what are they? Why do we need one? And do you want to be one?
I thought they were like little horses.
Yeah, with little points.
With little points in them. You know, in the tech world, first of all, I think the whole unicorn thing is like overblown, and I honestly think, so in the tech world, unicorns are companies that are worth $1 billion or more. You know, it used to be that like if your company was worth $100 million, that was like a really big deal. Now it's $1 billion. I think it's really overblown. I think this whole idea of like measuring a company's importance by its valuation is a really silly thing to do. You've got to, because valuations are really just a reflection of whatever some market thinks of at some time, whatever some investors want to pay at some time, and that's often a reflection of all sorts of irrationalities in private markets. It has nothing to do with the impact you can actually make on people and you know the long term things you can go build.
You only have to look at One Kings Lane, right? At one point had $1 billion valuation.
There's so many of these things.
$10 million, I think.
Yeah, so many of these things. And yet, on the flip side, you have the companies that like actually changed the world, like the Oracles and the Intels and those guys. When they were small, nobody valued them at anything. Even probably $100 million.
Today they still might not, but anyway, yeah.
Right, and so I think it's sexy to be that. I think it's great for media purposes and things like that. But it's just not something we chase. It's not something we care about. So I'm I'm glad the headline was there.
What do you want to do? What is your ultimate goal with Curate?
One of the litmus tests that we're going to measure the success of Curate by is the number of entrepreneurs we create. Look, we have offices in New York and Seattle now. We have a lot of people, but Philly is home. Philly as a technology market has a lot of maturing to do, and that's an opportunity. And that maturity, that maturation happens as a process. It happens because companies like ours grow and thrive and give rise to people who feel empowered to go start the next thing. That's how the Valley grew, that's how New York has grown, that's how Austin's grown, that's how a lot of these tech ecosystems are growing. And it's for that reason that the way we're building our company is one in which we provide a tremendous amount of transparency. We want people to see how the sausage gets made. We want people to be able to leave Curate at some point and go, I now know how to build a rapidly growing company, and now I feel confident enough to go do that. If we can do that, then we can actually help make a lasting impact on Philadelphia and help really develop an ecosystem here. This is a city that cares. It cares so deeply, and I love that about this city. I'm not from here, I'm from the Silicon Valley, but the level of care for this city is just so incredible, and it's not like just looking to our political leaders to do it. I have never lived in a city where the people on the street care so deeply about it, and for that reason, we want to build a company that empowers people to go build what's next.
Awesome. Why don't we shift and segue into the tech scene here in Philly, and can we sort of put to bed once and for all, we get asked all the time, is it for real? Is this all just a bunch of hot air? Does Philly really have a viable tech scene?
Absolutely. I mean, we live in such a great time to build tech companies now. When I was growing up and living in the Valley, to interact with people if they were remote, and so it just didn't happen. Now, capital's mobile. Ideas are mobile, entrepreneurs are mobile, everything's mobile, everything exists in so many places, particularly in the business-to-business space, which we sell to marketers. You can be anywhere. We live in a world now where companies like ExactTarget, which was an email solution, was bought by Salesforce for billions of dollars. They're based out of Indianapolis. Right? I can guarantee you Indianapolis is not it's not the Valley, okay? You can build companies anywhere now. And so now a lot of it comes down to where do you want to live? Where do you want to be? And you can do that. And so I think people who bet against Philly, are oftentimes trying to just get attention.
Well, I'm going to be provocative here for you. I'm going to read from a rival publication. This is not Philly Mag. The person talking about their startup apparently has sort of joined Silicon Valley and maybe some operations in Philadelphia. It couldn't have happened in Philly. I don't think you'll see companies like us come out of Philadelphia. You won't see it out of Philadelphia. There's something special in the water in Silicon Valley. Now, you'll always have smaller pockets of people anywhere that's a decent university, and Philly is one, and Drexel is good, and Penn is good, and Temple is good. You'll have some pockets here and there, but you won't attract 400 world-class developers to build a billion-dollar tech company in Philadelphia. What do you say to that?
I mean, look, haters gonna hate, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Look, I think as an entrepreneur, you have so many reasons why why the odds are stacked against you, and you have so many things that, so many reasons why your business shouldn't exist and shouldn't make it. The last thing I need to worry about is whether or not Philly is in favor or, is a favorable or not favorable location. I got much bigger things to worry about, and I would just suggest that most entrepreneurs, let's focus on the stuff that's actually going to matter to your business. Don't worry about this. It's, as long as more of us continue to succeed here, we're gonna breed an ecosystem that knows how to go through this. The Valley does have some benefits. I'm not discounting it. And I don't think we should try to aspire to be the Valley. Aspire to be ourselves. But I think the biggest advantage they have is they've got generations of people who have done this before in tech. We don't have that benefit, but that doesn't mean we can't get there.
Awesome. What about the role of government? I mean, the past administration we both knew pretty well, and we're sitting in the Michael Nutter auditorium here. What about the current administration? How are they doing so far? What's your report card on so far into the administration?
I'm stoked. Like I'm, A+. When Mayor Kenny took office, I had an op-ed that was picked up in the Enquirer, I believe, and my belief as a tech CEO is I need the government to act as a cheerleader. I need the mayor to act as a cheerleader. I don't have a lot of needs from the government per se, like taxes, and we lose money. Like the taxes are sort of irrelevant to us right now. We want they have a platform. They have the ability to put folks out there and the Kenny administration admittedly is like, look, we don't know that much about tech, and I think they sort of were a little concerned about that and the authenticity of it. I was like, look, just show up, and he has shown up, and he has made his presence known, and I love that. I love that they've embraced it. Tech is not the biggest jobs creator relative to maybe manufacturing and things like that. But it's so important for the future of the city.
Very interesting stat. Tech is driving something like 25% of all new job growth in the region. So definitely on the rise.
It's definitely on the rise, and I think, and I think it depends on kind of how you slice and dice tech and things like that. But it's almost irrelevant because the future of jobs. I mean, everything is based on software now. Whether you're in a true tech company or a tech-enabled company, right? As Andreessen says, software is eating the world, right? I mean, it reshapes everything now. And so, you have to bet on it. And so, I think for our administration to show up is the biggest thing I could ask for, and they have done it. And I love that about them.
That's awesome. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to end with a couple of maybe more serious, more penetrating questions, and we get to know Pooh here a little bit more. We talked about Curelate and what you hope for Curelate. What are you about? What is your mission on this planet, do you think?
God, I had two little girls. And my mission is to raise two really strong little girls. It has completely changed my life. I have two little girls under 2, and between that and Curelate, I don't have a lot of time for a lot of things, unfortunately. But I'm just so humbled and honored that people will trust their lives to me in some capacity, and I just want to do right by them. That's kind of it.
Awesome. And for any sort of potentially budding entrepreneurs in the audience, I mean, you've been through a lot. You're 40, very young looking 40, but you've been through a lot. You've built a number of companies. You're having great success with Curelate. What have you learned along the way, and what would you share with people who are thinking about maybe going down this crazy entrepreneurial path?
I think probably the number one thing is, trying to believe in yourself. I mean, I waited. It took me a really long time, as I said earlier, and that was a lot of years that were lost. I spent a lot of years doing things that I didn't like, and it didn't make me happy, and it was, you don't get that. You just don't get that back. I worked for a lot of employers that, I didn't like, and they didn't like me, and it was sort of like
Couldn't hold down a job, I guess.
No, listen, I've been fired. Like it is what it is. And so, I guess that my number one thing I tell entrepreneurs all the time, I kind of said this earlier, there's 1,000 reasons why your business should not make it. Your job as an entrepreneur is to find the 1 or 2 reasons that it should exist, and that's what you got to do. And at the end of the day, you just can't make excuses for it. You got to do it, and may not work. That's okay. Don't take it personal.
Awesome, ladies and gentlemen of Pooh Gupta.